I believed the invitation was an olive branch until the car door slammed and the tires ground against the gravel. The forest swallowed every signal. They assume because I am 58, I will be afraid. I will get lost. I will vanish exactly as their narrative requires. But they missed one detail. I did not walk into these woods to be abandoned. I entered them to look the truth in the eye. My name is Mara Whitlock. I live in a one-bedroom apartment on the edge of Stonehaven, Washington, where the rain smells like pine needles and gasoline. At 58, I have learned that invisibility is a texture, not a colour. It is the grey of my walls and the beige of my curtains. My left knee throbs with a dull, rhythmic ache, a souvenir from a fall 3 years ago, but my mind remains as sharp as a freshly cut diamond. I keep my space disciplined. Everything has a place. 1 cup for coffee, 1 plate for toast. Silence is my roommate, and usually we get along just fine. The phone rang at 10 in the morning. It was Tessa. My daughter does not call on Tuesdays. Tuesdays are for her yoga classes and her PTA meetings, the carefully curated performance of her suburban life. "Mom, let's go on a picnic," she said. Her voice was sugar spun over steel. "Just the family. Like we used to do at Larchwood." Remember Larchwood? The name pulled at a thread in my chest I thought had rotted away. Before I could answer, another voice cut in. "Graham?" My son-in-law speaks with the precision of a spreadsheet, devoid of warmth. "We will pick you up at 9 tomorrow morning," Graham said. He was on speakerphone, his voice echoing slightly. "We have everything packed." "Oh, and Mara, do not forget to bring those medical release forms you mentioned last week, the ones for the new specialist." I don't think I need to bring those to a picnic." "Graham," I said, gripping the phone tighter. "Just bring them," he insisted, his tone dropping a fraction of a degree. "Better safe than sorry." "Right. We can look them over while the kids play." I stared at the rain streaking my window. I knew this tone. It was the same tone he used at Thanksgiving when he joked that I was a depreciating asset. It was the same tone Tessa used when she sighed after I asked for help with my groceries. A sigh that screamed of burden. To them. I am a slow-moving object in their fast-paced lane. I am the mother who needs rides, the grandmother who tells stories nobody wants to hear. Their silence is always louder than their words. It is a permission slip they sign every day to treat me like furniture. But then I thought of the children. Rowan is 22 now, with eyes that actually see me. She is the only one who asks how my day was and waits for the answer. And Jace, 16 years old and already carrying the weight of the world in his shoulders. He says little. He scans rooms like he is looking for the exit sign. I wanted to see them. I needed to see them. I went to my closet. On the top shelf, hidden behind a stack of towels, were 2 wrapped boxes. I pulled them down. For Rowan. I had bound a leather album of photos from before she was born, images of women in our family who did not ask for permission to exist. For Jace, my old Canon film camera. It was heavy, mechanical, and real. I remembered the last time Graham saw it. "Why do you keep that junk?" he had sneered, kicking at the box. "It's just vintage trash. It takes pictures of things as they are." I had replied, "Not as we want them to look. He thinks I am simple. They all do. They see a woman who limps and drinks herbal tea. They do not know about Vanguard Harbour compliance. They do not know that for the last 20 years. I have processed high-risk financial audits from this very kitchen table. My employers value discretion above all else. My minimalism is not a result of poverty. It is a uniform. I keep my life small, so no one looks twice. It is the best way to hide in plain sight. I placed the gifts in my tote bag. I packed my medication. I hesitated, then grabbed the folder Graham asked for, though my stomach churned. Maybe this time. I whispered to the empty room. Maybe this time. They just want me. I convinced myself it was true. I convinced myself that the edge in Graham's voice was stress, not malice. I slid my phone into my pocket. I did not know it then, but that was the last moment I would hold on to the illusion. It was the last time I would hear my daughter's voice and believe she was speaking to her mother. My daughter's house in Briarcrest sat on the hill like a fortress of glass and steel. It was beautiful in the way a scalpel is beautiful. The driveway was swept clean of any wayward leaves, and the front lawn was manicured to within an inch of its life. Inside, the air smelled of lemon polish and expensive candles, a scent designed to cover up the fact that no one actually lived here. We merely occupied the space between cleaning services. Graham met me at the door. He wore a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly heating bill. He did not hug me. He patted my shoulder, a gesture one might use on a well-behaved dog. "Glad you made it. Mara," he said, ushering me into the foyer. "Traffic can be tricky for you these days, I imagine. Reaction times slow down after 50. Statistics say my driving is fine." "Graham," I replied, keeping my voice level. He laughed, a sharp bark of a sound. "I am just looking out for you. We have to be realistic about our limitations. Speaking of limits, look at this." He swept his arm toward the living room window, framing the view of the valley below. My new development project breaks ground next month. 300 acres. It takes vision to see potential in dirt. Most people just see the ground, but I see the equity. He paused, looking down at me with a smirk that did not reach his eyes. "It is good we have room here. You know, for family members who might need supervision down the line." I felt the sting, precise and intentional. Before I could respond, Tessa appeared. She looked thin, her smile tight and stretched over her teeth like a rubber band. "Oh, Mom, stop looking so serious," she said, looping her arm through Graham's. "He is just joking. You know Graham's sense of humour. He loves to tease." "It is hilarious," I said dryly. "That phrase, 'he is just joking,' has been the soundtrack of her marriage. It is the lie she tells herself to keep the peace, the chime of a clock counting down the minutes of her dignity." I excused myself to the kitchen. Rowan was there, chopping vegetables with aggressive precision. When she saw me, her shoulders dropped. "Grandma," she whispered, pulling me into a hug that smelled of fresh basil. I am so sorry about him. He has been on a tear all week. It is fine." "Rowan." I lied. Jace was leaning against the refrigerator. He looked like he wanted to phase through the wall. He handed me a bottle of water, his eyes scanning the hallway to make sure his father was not approaching. He opened his mouth, his lips parting slightly as if to form a warning. But then he clamped them shut and just nodded. The fear in his eyes was a cold draft in the warm room. I took the water and went back to the living room. Graham and Tessa were on the patio, arguing in hushed tones. I sat near the coffee table where Graham had left his leather briefcase open. It was careless, or perhaps arrogant. A thick manila envelope was sticking out, the corner caught on the leather latch. The bold, black letters at the top of the document hit me harder than a physical blow. Guardianship packet. My heart hammered against my ribs. I reached for it, my fingers trembling. But Tessa walked in. She moved with a speed I had not seen in years, snatching the envelope and shoving it into the bag. "What was that, Tessa?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She laughed, a brittle, fracturing sound. "Oh, just some boring insurance papers. For the house, liability coverage," it said, "guardianship." I stated. Graham stepped in from the patio, the sliding door clicking shut behind him. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Mum, you are reading too much into things," he said, his voice smooth and dangerous. "It is just financial housekeeping, estate planning. You do not need to worry your head about the complex stuff. We handle the burdens so you can relax." I did not press it. I knew better than to corner a predator in his own den. I let them believe I was satisfied with the lie. That night, the guest room felt like a cell. The sheets were too stiff, the silence too heavy. Around 2 a.m, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I crept to the door and pressed my ear against the wood. "It is a done deal." Graham's voice hissed through the crack. He was on the phone. "Yeah. Tomorrow. The location is perfect. No cell service. Just need the signature. Once she signs, everything will be clean." I backed away from the door, my legs shaking. The word "clean" echoed in the dark. They were not taking me on a picnic to reminisce. They were taking me to an execution of my rights. My instinct screamed at me to pack my bag, to steal a car, to run back to the safety of my small, grey apartment. But I did not. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. If I ran, they would just chase me with lawyers and doctors and lies. I needed to know exactly how they planned to break me. I did not sleep. I waited for the sun to rise, armed with nothing but the terrible knowledge that my family was no longer my family. They were the enemy. The morning sun hit the kitchen counters with a brightness that felt accusatory. Graham was already in motion, moving with a frenetic energy that did not match the casual nature of a family picnic. He was not just packing a cooler, he was curating a crime scene. "I have the route mapped out offline," Graham announced, snapping the lid onto a plastic container. "I packed the sparkling water you like. Mara. And I double-checked your pain medication schedule. You are due for a dose at noon." "Right, I have it right here." He tapped his chest pocket. The gesture was meant to be comforting, but it felt like a threat. He was taking control of my biology. We moved to the driveway. The air was crisp, but I was sweating under my coat. Before I could get into the back seat, Tessa stepped in front of me. She held out her hand, palm up. "Mum, why don't you give me your phone?" she asked. Her voice wavered, just for a second, before she cleared her throat. "The signal is terrible up there. It just drains the battery trying to find a tower. Plus, you don't want to drop it on the trail. I will keep it safe in the glove compartment." I looked at her hand. It was shaking. "I can hold it." "Tessa," I said, "just give it to her." "Mara," Graham called out from the driver's seat. "Let's disconnect for once. Live in the moment." I forced a smile that felt like cracking plaster. Of course. I handed the phone to Tessa as her fingers closed around it. I saw relief wash over her face, not the relief of a daughter helping her mother, but the relief of an accomplice securing a loose end. Rowan came out to the porch, her car keys in hand. "I have an hour before my shift. I can come for the drive. Maybe hike the first mile with you guys." "No," Graham said instantly. The word was a gunshot. "You have work. Besides, this is a quiet trip. Old people talk. You would be bored to tears? Go make your lattes. Rowan's jaw tightened. She looked at Tessa, waiting for her mother to intervene, to invite her. Tessa just looked down at her boots. Rowan stormed back inside, the screen door slamming behind her. Jace was the last to emerge. He was wearing a hoodie, hood up, hands buried deep in the front pocket. He walked past me to get to the other side of the car, but as he squeezed by, he stumbled slightly. He pressed against my side. I felt his hand slip into the deep pocket of my wool coat. It was a quick, clumsy movement. He pulled away without making eye contact. I reached into my pocket and felt cold metal. A whistle, the kind hikers use for emergencies. I looked at him, but he was staring fixedly at a crack in the driveway. He said nothing, but the message was deafening. You are going to need this. The car ride was a study in sensory deprivation disguised as entertainment. Graham turned the radio up, blasting generic pop music that filled the space where conversation should have been. He tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. Too hard. Too fast. Tessa stared out the window, her reflection in the glass looking ghostly and detached. She was not looking at the scenery. She was disassociating. We arrived at the edge of Larchwood an hour later. The gravel parking lot was empty. Graham bypassed the main trailhead, the one with the wide, flat paths and the picnic benches. He steered the car toward a narrow service road that wound up the side of the ridge. Graham, the picnic grounds are back there, I said, leaning forward. Too crowded, he said, his eyes fixed on the rearview mirror, watching me. We are taking the North Ridge Trail. It is more private. The view is worth the walk. My stomach turned. I knew the North Ridge. It was steep, rocky, and led to a dense thicket of old-growth firs. It did not lead to a picnic spot. It led to isolation. The car lurched over a pothole and came to a stop. As the engine idled, something rolled across the dashboard console. It was a small orange pill bottle. The label was facing me. Mara Whitlock, lorazepam. 2 million wow. I froze. I do not take lorazepam. I have never been prescribed sedatives. Graham's hand shot out like a cobra, snatching the bottle and shoving it into the center console. What was that? I asked. My voice steady despite the alarm bells ringing in my head. Just supplements, Graham said. He turned off the car. The silence that rushed in was heavy and suffocating. He turned in his seat to look at me. His face was a mask of calm, but his eyes were dead. Mom, trust us, he said. It was not a request. It was not a reassurance. It was a command. He was telling me to surrender my reality to his fabrication. I gripped the whistle in my pocket, feeling the hard metal bite into my palm. Okay, I said. I opened the door and stepped out into the trees. I did not trust them. I knew exactly what they were doing. And I knew that the woman who got back into this car, if she ever did, would not be the same woman who just stepped out of it. The forest floor was a treacherous quilt of slick moss and hidden roots. Every step sent a jolt of electricity through my bad knee, a sharp reminder of my physical limits. Graham walked beside me, his hand gripping my elbow with a force that felt less like support and more like a steerage mechanism. He was not guiding me along the trail. He was guiding me away from it. Careful here. Mara, Graham said, pulling me to the left, away from the marker I had spotted on a pine tree. The path is washed out ahead. We need to cut through here. I knew he was lying. I knew the soil compression under my boots felt wrong for a hiking trail, Too soft, too undisturbed. But I let him lead. Behind us, Tessa trailed by 5 yards. She did not look at the trees or the sky. She looked at her wrist. She checked her watch 3 times in 10 minutes. She was not hiking. She was counting down. We reached a small, unnatural clearing, hemmed in by dense scrub. The canopy was thick here, choking out the sunlight and leaving us in a grey, perpetual twilight. It was cold, a damp chill that settled deep in the marrow. "This looks perfect," Graham announced. He dropped the heavy picnic basket onto a flat rock. He did not open it. Instead, he cocked his head, feigning attention. "Do you hear that?" Hear what Tessa asked, her voice tight. "Water. A stream." "Just over that ridge," Graham said, pointing into the dense undergrowth. "We need fresh water to rinse the fruit. Tessa, come help me carry the bottles. Mum, you sit, rest that leg. We will be right back. I can come with you." Tessa stammered, looking at me with wide, guilty eyes. "No." Graham cut in. "Let your mother rest. Come on." He grabbed Tessa's arm and pulled her into the brush. The leaves swallowed them instantly. I sat on the cold rock. I did not close my eyes. I counted. 1 minute. The sound of their footsteps crunching on dry leaves faded. 2 minutes. A crow called out, a harsh, grating sound that echoed in the emptiness. 5 minutes. The silence returned, heavy and absolute. It was not a peaceful silence. It was the silence of a vacuum, sucking the air out of the world. 10 minutes. I stood up, my knee locked, screaming in protest, but I forced my weight onto it. "Tessa," I called out. My voice sounded small against the towering firs. There was no answer. Graham, nothing. Just the wind rattling the dead branches. I did not wait for them to return. I knew they were not coming back. I turned and began to limp. Not toward the stream Graham had invented, but back the way we had come. I moved as fast as my leg would allow, ignoring the branches that whipped against my face. I reached the service road where we had parked. The gravel was empty. I looked down. Deeply etched into the soft mud of the shoulder were fresh tire tracks, tearing away from the spot where the car had been. They had peeled out fast, the tread marks erratic and desperate. They were gone. Panic tried to claw its way up my throat, but I swallowed it down with cold logic. I reached for my pocket to call for help, my hand slapping against the fabric. Then I remembered. Tessa had my phone. She was keeping it safe. I stood alone in the vast, indifferent wilderness of Washington State. I was 58 years old, disabled, and abandoned without communication. Then I saw it. Fluttering near the edge of the tire tracks, caught on a thorny bush, was a single sheet of paper. It must have slipped out of Graham's folder when he slammed the car door in his haste. I bent down, my joints popping, and plucked it from the thorns. It was a formal document, the letterhead crisp and official. Capacity evaluation. Appointment, patient, Mara Whitlock Chort. October 14th time, 11:00 a.m. I looked at my watch. It was 10:45 in the morning. The realization hit me with the precision of a sniper's bullet. They did not just dump me here to die. They dumped me here so I would miss this appointment. When I failed to show up, the doctor would mark me as a no-show, confused and wondering. It would be the first documented proof of my cognitive decline. They were building a paper trail of my incompetence while I was fighting for my life. I crushed the paper in my fist. The fear that had been shivering in my chest evaporated, replaced by a heat that had nothing to do with the temperature. So, this is how you want to end this? I whispered to the empty road. I looked at the tire tracks fading into the distance. Then I turned my back on them. I did not walk down the road they expected me to follow. I turned north, into the deeper woods, toward the faint, overgrown game trail I remembered from 30 years ago. I adjusted my coat. I gripped the whistle in my pocket. I began to walk. I was not lost. I was hunting. I took inventory of my survival with the detached efficiency of an auditor closing a ledger. My assets were few. A half-empty bottle of water Jace had given me, the silver whistle, my wool coat, the appointment slip I had rescued from the mud. That was all. I did not cry. Tears waste water and salt, and I could afford to lose neither. I pulled a loose thread from the inner hem of my coat, a long red fibre. I tied it around the branch of a sapling at waist height. Then I moved 10 paces and tied another. I was not wandering. I was creating a grid. My knee throbbed with a dull, insistent rhythm, but I ignored it. I could have walked back to the main road immediately. I could have flagged down a passing car. But I stopped myself. If I emerged now, flustered and limping, I would look exactly like the confused, dementia-ridden mother they described. The police would call Graham. He would rush over, play the relieved son-in-law, and say, "See?" She wandered off just like we feared. No, I needed time. I needed their lie to settle so I could break it. I climbed a small ridge that overlooked the service road. From this vantage point, I studied the tire tracks in the mud below. They told a story my daughter would never admit. The car had not just driven away, it had performed a 3-point turn so precise it looked mechanical. There were no skid marks of panic, no erratic swerves of a driver looking for a lost passenger. It was a rehearsed extraction. I sat on a mossy rock and took out the whistle. I found a piece of sharp quartz on the ground. With steady hands, I carved a deep, jagged cross into the smooth metal of the mouthpiece. If they tried to swap this whistle for another one later to claim I never had it, this mark would prove them liars. I folded the capacity evaluation appointment paper into a tiny square and tucked it deep inside my bra, against my skin. It was the only place I knew was safe. Night fell like a heavy curtain. The temperature plummeted. The woods, which had been silent, began to wake up with the sounds of things that hunt in the dark. I found shelter under the low-hanging boughs of a western hemlock. The needles created a dry, insulated pocket. I pulled my knees to my chest. Fear is what they buy with haste. I whispered to myself, "Do not buy it." I focused on my breathing. In, for 4 seconds. Hold, for 4 seconds. Out, for 4 seconds. Then, I saw it. A beam of light sliced through the darkness about 50 yards away. My first instinct was to shout, but I clamped my hand over my mouth. The light was not sweeping back and forth in a frantic search pattern. It was pointed at the ground. It was moving slowly, methodically along the path where we had stopped. It was searching for something small. I squinted through the pine needles. The figure holding the light was tall. He wore a jacket I recognized. Graham. He was not calling my name. He was muttering to himself, his voice carrying on the cold wind. "Damn it! Where is it?" Graham hissed, kicking at a pile of leaves. "It has to be. It fell right here when I—" Damn paper. He was not looking for me. He was looking for the appointment slip. He had realized it was missing from his folder, and he knew that piece of paper was the loose thread that could unravel his entire tapestry of lies. He stopped near the bush where I had found it. He shone the light around in a tight circle, panic evident in his jerky movements. It's not here. He breathed out, the sound jagged and fearful. If she found it. He stood there for a long moment, the beam of his flashlight cutting a hole in the night. He was close enough that I could hear his heavy breathing. If I stayed silent, he would leave, assuming the wind had blown the paper away. But I did not want him to leave with his confidence intact. I wanted him to know that the forest was not empty. I raised the whistle to my lips. I blew it once. Hard. Shraw. The sound was piercing, a violent tear in the silence. Graham froze. He spun around, the flashlight beam swinging wildly, trying to find the source. He looked terrified. I did not blow it again. I did not call out. I just watched him scramble backward, slipping on the wet leaves, terrified of the darkness he thought he controlled. He did not run toward the sound to save me. He turned and ran back toward his car. I lowered the whistle. That blast was not a plea for help. It was a timestamp. I had just logged the start of the war. At 8:14 in the morning, back in Stonehaven. Graham initiated the second act of his performance. I can visualize it with perfect clarity, as if I were a fly on the wall of my own kitchen. He dialed 911, his voice pitched to the exact frequency of a distressed, responsible citizen. My mother-in-law? She is confused, Graham told the dispatcher, allowing a tremor to enter his voice. She wandered off while we were setting up lunch. We looked everywhere, but, God, it's been hours. She has these episodes. While he was broadcasting his lies, Tessa was playing her part on the front lawn. She wept into a tissue for the benefit of Officer Miller and the neighbors who had gathered to watch the tragedy unfold. My mother has been slipping away for months. Tessa sobbed, clutching her cardigan. We tried so hard to keep her independent. But her hearing, her memory, it is just heartbreaking. I told Graham we shouldn't have taken her out, but she wanted to go so badly. Graham stepped out of the house, holding a manila folder. He presented my medical history to the police, a curated selection of documents. He flashed the capacity evaluation appointment slip, the one he thought he still had, or perhaps a copy he had printed, careful to keep his thumb over the timestamp that would prove we were in the woods when I was supposed to be in a doctor's office. We have an appointment for her evaluation, Graham said, shaking his head. We were just trying to give her one last nice day before things got official. But the script hit a snag. Rowan was standing by the porch railing, her arms crossed, her face pale. Why didn't you go with her? Rowan asked, her voice cutting through her father's monologue. You said you wouldn't leave her side. You told me you were going to watch her. Graham spun around, his eyes hard. Rowan, stop. You are upset. I am not upset. I am asking a question. Rowan shouted. How do 3 people lose one woman who can barely walk? You don't understand how dangerous, how unpredictable the elderly can be. Graham snapped, his voice dropping to a low growl that the police officers interpreted as paternal stress. Go inside. He signalled to Jace. My grandson was escorted toward the car to be taken to a friend's house to avoid the shock. As Jace passed Rowan, he didn't speak. He looked at her, his eyes wide and terrified. A silent telegram that screamed, "Do not believe them." Miles away, I was fighting a different battle. The sun was high now, but the forest floor remained in shadow. I found a blaze of blue paint on an old cedar tree, a boundary marker for the logging roads that used to run through here in the 80s. My leg was on fire, a burning sensation that radiated from my knee to my hip, but I forced myself to focus on the terrain. I moved 200 yards down a deer trail and froze. Attached to the trunk of a fir tree, camouflaged by moss, was a wildlife trail camera. It was a standard motion-activated model used by hunters or rangers to track game. But something was wrong. The strap was loose, and the lens had been knocked upward, pointing uselessly at the canopy rather than the trail. I stepped closer. The dust around the casing was disturbed. Someone had deliberately tilted it to ensure it would not record the road, to ensure it would not capture a luxury SUV driving away while an old woman stood alone. I reached up. My hands were bloody from the thorns, but steady. I adjusted the camera, angling it back down so the lens had a perfect, unimpeded view of the trail and the tire tracks embedded in the mud. If Graham came back to finish the job, or if the police came to investigate, the digital eye would be watching. I pushed on. The ranger station was another mile east. I counted my steps. 100. 200. I chewed on a pine needle to generate saliva. When the station came into view, it looked like a palace. It was a simple log structure with a green metal roof and a flag snapping in the wind. A ranger was on the porch, sipping coffee from a thermos. I stumbled out of the tree line. I must have looked like a spectre, hair wild, coat torn, mud caked on my boots. The ranger dropped his cup. "Ma'am, oh my God. Are you okay? Sit down. I will call for a medic." He rushed forward to grab my arm, expecting me to collapse, expecting me to cry for help. I planted my feet. I drew a breath that rattled in my chest, looking him dead in the eye. I did not ask for water. I did not ask for a doctor. "Officer," I said, my voice raspy but clear as a bell. "My name is Mara Whitlock. I am not lost. I was discarded. Turn on your body camera and record my statement immediately." The emergency room doctor was young, thorough, and completely immune to the narrative Graham had tried to spin. He checked my pupil dilation, my reflexes, and the bruising on my knee. But the most important exam was the one that happened between the physical checks. "Can you tell me the current president, Mrs. Whitlock?" he asked, shining a penlight into my eyes. "The president is," I answered correctly, adding the vice president's name for good measure. "And can you count backward from 100 by sevens? 100. 93. 86. 79. I recited the numbers with the flat, boring precision of a metronome. He clicked his pen and made a note on his clipboard. "Well, physically, you are dehydrated and your knee is inflamed. But cognitively, you are as sharp as anyone I have seen today. There is zero evidence of dementia or acute confusion." That was the first domino to fall. The medical report was now a shield. Once the police took my initial statement, I asked for a private room to make a phone call. I did not call my family. I dialed a number I had memorized 10 years ago. Eleanor Price. The voice on the other end answered. Crisp. Professional. "Eleanor." "It is Mara," I said. "I need you to listen carefully. I am safe, but I am currently at the Stonehaven Ranger Station." Mara Eleanor's tone shifted from lawyer to confidant instantly. "We have been trying to ping your phone for 3 hours. What happened?" "They tried to leave me." "Eleanor." "They staged a wandering incident." I took a breath, letting the cold air fill my lungs. "It is time. Activate Protocol Pine." There was a pause on the line. heavy with the weight of what I was asking. Protocol Pine was the nuclear option. It was a set of pre-signed executive orders we had prepared for a worst-case scenario. "Are you sure?" Eleanor asked softly. "Once we turn this key, there is no going back. It freezes everything." "I am sure," I said. "Revoke the power of attorney immediately. Freeze my personal accounts. And Eleanor, cut the feed to the Cedar Trust." This was the secret I had kept in the dark. Graham and Tessa believed they were living on Graham's real estate genius and Tessa's budgeting. They were wrong. They were living on the dividends of a blind trust I funded through a series of anonymous LLCs. Vanguard Harbor Compliance was not just my employer, it was my creation. For 15 years, I had been the invisible floor beneath their feet, propping up their lifestyle so they would never feel the struggle I felt as a young mother. I had bought their comfort with my silence. Now, I was calling in the debt. "Done," Eleanor said, the sound of typing clicking furiously in the background. "By 5 o'clock today, their credit cards will decline, the mortgage autopay will bounce, and Mara, do not speak to them. Not a word. If they call, you direct them to me. Any sentence you speak to them can be twisted into evidence of emotional instability." "I understand," I said. I hung up and turned to the ranger, who was downloading data onto a laptop. "Did you get it?" I asked. "We recovered the SD card from the trail camera you marked," the ranger said, looking at the screen with a frown. "And we have requested the GPS data from your son-in-law's vehicle. If he turned around where you said he did, the satellite will see it. I want to file for an elder protection order," I stated. The ranger looked up, surprised. "Ma'am, usually that is for physical abuse cases. It is a severe measure. It is not about fear," I replied, smoothing the wrinkles in my torn coat. "It is about evidence preservation. If they can come near me, they will try to gaslight me. Or worse, claim I am being manipulated. I need a legal wall between us. I want them barred from contacting me or accessing my medical records effective immediately." An hour later, Eleanor arranged for a new phone to be delivered to me at the station. I turned it on and logged into my cloud account. The messages that had been sent to my old phone, the one Tessa still had populated the screen. There were 12 missed calls from Graham. There were 5 missed calls from Tessa. And then, a single text message from Tessa. Sent 20 minutes ago. Likely after the police had contacted them to say I was found alive and lucid. "Mom, I'm sorry. Please just call us. We can explain." I stared at the words. "I'm sorry." 2 words that usually heal, but here, they were just another trap. She was not sorry she did it. She was sorry the script had flipped. I did not reply. I did not cry. I pressed my finger to the screen, selected the message, and hit delete. The message vanished. I was done reading their stories. It was time to write the judgment. 3 days later, I sat in the corner booth of a coffee shop 3 towns over from Stonehaven. I wore sunglasses and a scarf. Not for fashion, but because I was now a woman operating in the shadows. Rowan slid into the seat opposite me. She looked 10 years older than she had last week. Her eyes were rimmed with red, and she kept checking the door. "He checks the mileage on Mum's car," Rowan whispered, sliding a manila envelope across the table. I had to say I was going to the library. "Grandma, it is bad. Mum is terrified of him." "Focus." "Rowan," I said gently. "What did you find?" Rowan pulled up a photo on her phone. It was blurry, taken in haste, but the header was legible. It was a draft of a petition for emergency guardianship, dated 2 weeks before the picnic. He had it written up before we even left the house, Rowan said, her voice trembling. He told Mom it was just a precaution. But look at the date. I nodded. Thank you. Rowan. Now, listen to me. Go back. Act normal. Do not challenge him. But no buts, I said firmly. Safety first. As Rowan left, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. No name. Just a message that made the breath catch in my throat. Grandma, I'm not crazy. He planned it. Attached was a photo of a printout from the Home Office printer. It was a duplicate of the capacity evaluation appointment I had found in the mud, but this one had a sticky note attached to it in Graham's handwriting, print 3 copies. Send to Dr. Evans by Friday. I did not reply to Jace directly. I would not put a target on his back. Instead, I forwarded the screenshot to Eleanor. Arrangement for an interview with a Child Protective Services advocate. I told her over the phone 5 minutes later. Jace is a witness. Eleanor. Not a weapon. I want his statement taken in a safe room, by a professional, where Graham cannot intimidate him. Consider it done. Eleanor replied. But Mara, we have something bigger. The ranger sent the trail camera analysis. I opened the file she sent. The timestamp was the smoking gun. Graham had claimed to the police that he and Tessa searched for me all through the night until they called 911. The camera images told a different story. Image 1. The SUV leaving the woods at 11:30 in the morning. Image 2. The road, empty and silent for 7 hours. Image 3. The SUV returning at 5:45 in the morning, just as the sun was coming up. They had not searched. They had gone home, slept in their warm beds, and driven back at dawn to perform their panic for the authorities. That is filing a false police report, I said. It gets worse. Eleanor said. I had my investigator pull Graham's recent inquiries, last month. He contacted an insurance broker. He wasn't asking about life insurance for himself. He was asking about accidental death riders on a policy he took out on you a year ago. Specifically, he wanted to know the payout timeline for a hiking accident. I felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. This was not just abandonment. This was a slow-motion murder attempt for profit. And the money I asked? I followed the paper trail on the Briarcrest house. Eleanor said, Graham took out a $200,000 home equity loan 6 months ago. The paperwork says it was for renovations, but the money did not go to contractors. It went straight into Redwood Ventures, his shell company. And guess whose signature is on the co-signer line? Mine, I said. But I never signed that. Forgery. Eleanor confirmed. He is drowning in debt. Mara. He needed you out of the way so he could liquidate your assets to cover the hole he dug before the bank seized his company. I hung up and opened my briefcase. I pulled out an old, worn leather folder. Inside was a photograph of a man with kind eyes and a sharp suit. Clayton Reed, my mentor, my friend. He had died 10 years ago, but his voice was still the loudest thing in my head. Mara, he used to say. Generosity without boundaries is just self-destruction. Do not let anyone turn your kindness into their ownership. I had failed that lesson with my daughter. I had let my guilt over being a working mother turn into a blank check for her happiness. I had let them own me. I closed the folder. Eleanor, I said, calling her back. File the objection, now. Preemptive strike. And file a motion to freeze all assets related to the Hawthorne estate pending a fraud investigation. They haven't even filed for guardianship yet, Eleanor warned. This is an act of war. No, I said, watching the rain hit the window of the coffee shop. The war started in the woods. This is the invasion. The siege began with a ringtone. My new phone vibrated against the coffee shop table like a trapped insect, buzzing every 10 minutes. Tessa left voicemails that oscillated wildly between concern and accusation. Mom, please pick up. I am just scared you aren't safe. Her voice cracked in the recording. You are confused. We just want to bring you home. I did not answer. I forwarded every file to Eleanor. Let the lawyer speak. I told the empty room. Graham changed his strategy. He did not call. Instead, he went on the offensive in Stonehaven. He spoke to neighbours over the fence, shaking his head with practiced sorrow. He told the barista at the local cafe that I had been sundowning for months, that my accusations were the sad, paranoid delusions of a decaying mind. He was trying to poison the jury pool before we even stepped into a courtroom. He tried to buy an ally. Rowan met me again, her face pale. He sat me down last night, Rowan said, gripping her teacup. He told me that if I testified that you were confused, he would make sure my student loans were paid off in full. He said he would give me a down payment for a condo. And what did you say? I asked. I told him to go to hell. Rowan said. Then I told Mom. I told her, Mom, you are letting him write your whole life. You are letting him turn you into a monster. And she just cried. She's so scared of being poor. Grandma. She thinks he is the only thing keeping the roof over our heads. I almost laughed. If only she knew the roof was held up by my pillars. Not his. Jace found a way to speak without speaking. He was under digital house arrest, his phone confiscated by Graham, but he slipped a note into Rowan's chemistry textbook before she left the house. Rowan slid the scrap of paper across the table to me. Cabin deed. Ask about Cedar Hollow. I looked at Eleanor, who was sitting beside me. She began typing furiously on her laptop. Cedar Hollow. Eleanor muttered. That is the vacation cabin Graham brags about at every Christmas party. He claims he bought it 5 years ago with his bonus. Look at the deed. Eleanor, I said. A moment later, she stopped typing. A slow, predatory smile spread across her face. The deed is not in Graham's name, Eleanor said. It is held by a holding company called Highland Limited Liability Company, and Highland is a subsidiary of, wait for it, Vanguard Harbour Compliance. My company, I said. I bought that cabin through the trust so the grandkids would have a place to ski. Graham has been parading around a house he does not own, paying mortgage into an account that cycles right back into my trust fund. He is paying rent to you and calling it equity, Eleanor said. This is perfect. I decided to fire a warning shot. I instructed the trust manager to suspend the anonymous family stipend that I had been funneling into their joint account for a decade. It was $5,000 a month, disguised as dividend yields from a forgotten investment. The effect was instantaneous. By noon the next day, Graham's credit card was declined at a gas station. I received the alert. He was beginning to suffocate. Panic makes people sloppy. It also makes them treacherous. That evening, Eleanor received a call from a junior associate at the firm representing Graham. The associate was young and rattled. He had overheard a conversation he wasn't supposed to hear. Graham made an offer to Tessa. Eleanor told me, her voice low. He drafted a separation agreement. He told Tessa that if she signs a statement, admitting that abandoning you in the woods was her idea. He will agree not to divorce her and will keep supporting the family. He is trying to set her up as the sole perpetrator to save his own skin. And Tessa, I asked. She hasn't signed it yet, but she is realizing that she is not his partner. She is just another disposable asset. The court date was set. The judge ordered an emergency hearing in 72 hours to determine guardianship and address the allegations of elder abuse. The town of Stonehaven held its breath. They expected a tragedy. They expected a confused old woman to be crushed by the weight of a successful, articulate businessman and his dutiful wife. They thought I was walking into an ambush. They did not know I was the one who set the trap. The hearing began at 9 in the morning. Graham wore a navy suit that shouted respectability. He stood before the judge, his voice trembling with a perfectly rehearsed sorrow. "Your Honor," Graham said, placing a hand over his heart. "We are not trying to take away Mara's freedom. We are trying to protect it. She wandered off. We searched for hours. It breaks my heart to see her in this state of denial." Tessa sat beside him, weeping into a handkerchief. She nodded at the right beats, a silent chorus to his lie. My lawyer, Eleanor, did not object. She waited. When Graham finished, she stood up. She did not use adjectives. She used data. "Your Honor, the petitioner claims he searched all night," Eleanor said, projecting an image onto the screen. This is a time-stamped photo from a trail camera located 50 yards from the abandonment site. It shows Mr. Hawthorne's vehicle leaving the forest at 11:30 in the morning. And here is the vehicle returning at 5:45 the next morning. He did not search. He went home to sleep. The courtroom went quiet. Graham tugged at his collar. That camera is faulty," Graham stammered. "I would like to speak," I said. The judge nodded. I stood up. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the silver whistle. I did not ask for permission. I blew it. Shrike. The sound ricocheted off the mahogany walls. Graham flinched so hard he nearly knocked over the water pitcher. "I blew this whistle when he came back," I said, my voice steady. "He was not looking for me. He was looking for a piece of paper he lost. Look at the mouthpiece." I held it up. I carved a mark into it with a stone. I knew he would try to say I was never there. I knew he would try to say I was crazy. "This is theatrics," Graham shouted, losing his composure. "No, Graham," Eleanor cut in. "This is accounting." She opened the next file. It was a flowchart of money. It showed thousands of dollars moving from a blind trust into the Hawthorne family accounts every month. For 15 years. Eleanor addressed the court, the mortgage, the private school tuition, the cars. They were not paid for by Mr. Hawthorne's business, which has been insolvent for a decade. They were paid for by the Vanguard Harbor Compliance Trust. The sole beneficiary and controller of that trust is Mara Whitlock. Graham's face drained of colour. He looked at me, and for the first time, he saw the checkbook, not the mother-in-law. And the house in Briarcrest, Eleanor continued, twisting the knife. The cabin at Cedar Hollow, Mr. Hawthorne does not own them. They are owned by a holding company. Mara Whitlock is the signatory. You have been living in her charity and calling it your empire. The doors at the back of the room opened. 2 police officers stepped in. They were not there for me. "Graham Hawthorne," the lead officer said, walking up the aisle. "We have a warrant for your arrest regarding insurance fraud and forgery of loan documents." The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut was louder than the whistle. Graham looked at Tessa, his eyes wide with panic. "Tessa, tell them. Tell them it was for us." He screamed as they dragged him out. Tessa did not move. She sat frozen, the reality of her life shattering around her. She looked at me, her makeup streaked, her face a mask of ruin. I didn't know about the loans, she whispered. Mum? I thought silence is what kept a family together. But it turns out silence is just how you bury your mother. But I did not stay buried, I said. I walked over to the table. I did not hug her. I looked down at the daughter I had protected for too long. I am cutting the funding. Tessa, I said. No more stipends, no more rent-free living. You are going to have to stand on your own 2 feet for the first time in your life. I paused, looking at Rowan and Jace, who were watching from the gallery with wide eyes. I have set up an education trust for the children. It covers everything, but there is one condition. Weekly family therapy, and Graham never touches a cent of it. I turned and walked toward the exit. The air outside was cold and smelled of rain. I stopped at the top of the courthouse steps and turned back. Tessa was standing in the doorway, looking small and terrified. You left me in the forest to make me disappear, I said, my voice carrying over the distance. But I came back so you could finally see me. And more importantly, so you could see yourself. Thanks so much for listening to this story. I really hope you enjoyed the twists and turns. Drop a comment down below and let me know where you are tuning in from. I love seeing how far these stories travel and hearing your thoughts on Mara's revenge. If you want more stories like this, please make sure to subscribe to the Nora Revenge Stories channel, hit that like button, and smash the hype button to help this video get discovered by more people. Catch you in the next one.